Licensing Committee, 24th of June 2024, starting at 10:30.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. There's just a couple of councillors have been unable to make it. I think there was some clash of meeting. I think something to do with another meeting. I'm not quite sure whether they were aware that that was cancelled. But anyway, so most of you will know I'm Councillor McPherson, Chair for Licensing, and just to remind everybody that this is a live meeting, so anything that may be in front of you, laptops, notes, or anything of that nature, can possibly be viewed on that live stream. So just to remind you of that. There are no fire alarms registered to go off today. I haven't heard the test one, so hopefully that's already happened. But if it does go off, then please follow the officers to ensure that you remain safe. The conveniences are out the door to the left. That was all right, yeah, out the door to the left, I have to think of that. But I'm sure most of you know where they are, but I see we've got some new people here. What I'd like to do, rather than me go through a list of those present, if I can ask the officers and councillors just to introduce themselves around the room, and the bonus of that is I can stop speaking. So if we start with Councillor Griffin.
Tim Griffin.
Councillor Rosie Moore.
Councillor Tim Bigg.
Councillor Karen Young.
Councillor Hugh Clough.
Councillor Imogen Blackburn-Horgan.
Elizabeth Lanahan, Legal Advisor.
Hello, Joe Dix, Environmental Quality and Growth Manager.
Luke Hatchpole, Environmental Health and Licensing Support Team Leader.
Yvonne O'Donnell, Environmental Health Manager.
Chris Connor, Committee Manager.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Luke and Joe down there, I couldn't see you because of the screen. This is right in line of the firework. So just apology, I'll try and make sure I've got a line of sight for you so you can, when it comes to speaking. Declaration of interest, members. I will remind you, although I know people in this room don't need to be reminded, that you can make declarations of interest at any time throughout the meeting. If you don't think of anything right now, that's fine. Just make that declaration as we proceed through. Are there any declarations of interest at this time? Okay, thank you very much. There are none. Minutes of the last meeting. Everybody received those. Any comments on those minutes would be appreciated. Going once, going twice. Okay, silence assumes assent. I'll sign those minutes in that case in a few minutes. That takes us to item 4 already, as you would expect. So that is now at public questions. And we do have a number of public questions. Just to remind those members who are here, I know a lot of us are old friends, we've known each other for a long time, but this session will last for a maximum of 30 minutes. You have 2 minutes to ask your question, but you will be allowed to ask a supplementary question also, which I know you haven't submitted, but that's fine. Just to remind you of the procedure, that's okay to do that. You can either, you can do one of two things. Should you wish to ask a supplementary question following the officer's response to your first question at that time, then that's fine. Or you may wish to reserve that question to the end of the meeting, and that will also be fine. But, so I'm trying to give you some extra space to speak, and you know, I always try and do that so you can think about what it is that you might want to say as a supplementary. But if I can ask that there will only be one question per speaker here and one supplementary per speaker also. So when you put that supplementary, will be up to you, whether directly following your first question or at the end of the meeting, you may choose which is best for you. Does that make sense? Everybody happy with that? I didn't make that overly complicated, did I? I think I was thinking that through as I was speaking, you know. I might have made that a bit more complicated than I required, but you can always ask. So we have an order of speakers, but quite honestly, I don't mind who goes first. But I have Mr. Wennick first on the list. If you wish to speak first, that's fine. And actually, I see that you've got your children here today. And that's absolutely fine. I mean, they're going to stay with you, and that's fine. It is a public building, just to reassure people. I'm absolutely fine with that, and it's nice to see young people in the chamber. So thank you for bringing them. Over to you.
Read out the question, or?
Yes, so the first question, the questions at this point will be taken as read. So you just need to introduce yourself, and if you're speaking on behalf of anyone, and the officer will respond. And then after that, you'll have an opportunity, as the chair just advised, to speak for 2 minutes in regards to a supplementary.
Okay, yeah. So my name is Kamil Winek. I'm a Hackney carriage driver. I'm representing myself. So the question is on the screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If this question is relating to the report that's coming later, then WAV vehicles can still be licensed as a petrol or diesel vehicle, and they're not currently impacted by the decision that is made today. Proprietors that were one of the 50 licence holders who took the opportunity to surrender their wheelchair accessible vehicle to license a zero emission saloon have had the option to swap the wheelchair option back into a WAV. Work is taking place at looking at what can be done to make it easier for wheelchair accessible users to access WAVs, and this includes adding telephone numbers to the list of WAVs on our website, and also in October we removed the age limit, so any age of a WAV can now be licensed. The availability of WAVs is not just an issue for Cambridge, but a national issue.
Yep. Is it my second question?
Yeah, please, if you wish to ask it now, please do.
So, Chair, it will be more for you. So, dear Chair, at the last minutes of the committee meetings in January 2023, you said, I asked many vulnerable people in a different group ages, is the silver taxi with the green stripe is the safe vehicle to be in? The answer was no. The public don't have a clue about the livery safety that we impose on our taxi fleet, which is as well wheelchair accessible taxi. Quite frankly, nobody knows except the old members of this committee, because we all new members over here, so you haven't been here when that was agreed. So you said, Chair, you said you could really feature with that. You said, I can feel my artistic side coming out here. One of the committee members suggests that should to go on the television as a promotion. And year and a half passed, and I'm sure you come up with some big, maybe national television advertisement about the silver color safety that we impose on our wheelchair accessible fleet, and that will help us to, build the customers back into the confidence into wheelchair accessible. It will help the drivers to, start to invest in those young drivers, because the old driver can't push the wheelchair up the ramp. But the young drivers, everyone moved out. No one is interested in those vehicles. So I'm so excited to hear about your artistic achievements in this matter. Please, Chair, if you could, if you don't have to, then thank you very much. That's the end of my question. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question. Actually, I remember us speaking about the silver cars with the green stripe. I've always believed in it. I think it is a huge safety feature for the city. And personally, I'm promoting that all the time. And I would guess that the rest of the committee are doing that also. But if I understand you correctly, what you said is that you've asked a number of people and they don't know what it is. They don't understand that the silver car with the green stripe is a safe environment in which they can find themselves home, especially in the nighttime economy, which is really also where it comes into its own, is the safety of young people at the nighttime economy. Is that, were you referring to the fact that not enough people know about it? Just to clarify that.
I was just referring to the fact that I'm interested what was actually done into a promotion of it. So, you know, with the television being mentioned and, you know, lining up and tunes and everything. So I'm just interested. Yeah, okay.
That is all received. We didn't say anything about the television, that I do know. But I don't think it's a bad point that you've made, actually, to be fair, that we could probably make more of that. We could probably make the public more aware that the silver car with the green stripe is, in actual fact, a City Council registered vehicle and a safe way to actually find your way to wherever it is you need to go. I think we probably could do a bit more on that, and I do accept that. And if you believe that people don't know enough about it, we perhaps might ask some questions of our own. But I think it's a fair point you've made, and I'm quite happy to speak to the officers after this meeting and see what we can do, what else we can do to actually publicise that fact. Because I do feel really strongly about it, that it's a great safety measure, and I'm quite happy to do a little bit more work on that. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, so that's a good question, thank you. Question number 2, Aisha, did I pronounce that right correctly?
So my question is, what happens when an electric vehicle breaks down?
Okay, thank you for that.
Similar to the current policy we have, for any temporary vehicle, it must be a like for like in relation to the type of vehicle already on that plate. Since June 2022, if a temporary loan company cannot fully provide an electric vehicle, we will allow an ultra-low vehicle plug-in with CO2 of less than 75. It can be any colour, and the window tints don't necessarily need to comply as long as the windows aren't blacked and the passenger can be seen in the back in daylight. So the quick answer to your question is it would have to be replaced like for like. But if the company don't have an electric, then it will be an ultra-low.
Do you mean by it can be, you're saying it has to be a plug-in hybrid then?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, can I ask a question again? Okay. What happens if the insurance company does not have an electric or a hybrid plug-in? They can only provide, because still there are many insurance companies who doesn't have the hybrid plug-in or electric vehicle, because I went through the same phase with our car and we couldn't get any vehicle for 3 months. What will happen then if they don't have a plug-in hybrid?
We would look at each case on a case-by-case basis. We would speak to the loan company as well, and if genuinely we cannot get an electric or an ultra-low, then we will consider a standard hybrid, but each case will be done on a case-by-case basis, depending on the length of time the temporary vehicle will be in operation.
Right, okay, it's not always we know the length of the time, because when an electric car is break down, it can take months before we can get the car back, because even the dealer or the garage does not know how long time it's going to take. So, you know, we can't, I know you said it's on individual basis, but how will you consider that on individual basis? Like if I say my vehicle is break down and they are offering me a hybrid as a Hackney, is there any evidence I need to provide? What will happen? Because I'm just a normal person, you know, my car break down, I just contacted the council, I can't get a like for like or plug-in hybrid. What will I do then? Because I was in a similar situation like a year ago, I couldn't get any car. I was out of work for 3 months, struggling with kids, bills and stuff. No support from anyone at all. So I just want to know, in my situation, now obviously the issue is solved, we paid a huge amount to repair an electric car, talking about £9,200 to repair an electric vehicle on the top. We are paying for that finance to repair, the repair cost on the top. We were paying the finance cost as well with no work at all. So I'm just asking, in my situation, how will it work?
As I said, we would have to look at each case on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, right.
Well, you timed that exactly. That came down to 1 second when you stopped speaking, so well done.
Sorry?
I said you timed that exactly. That came down to 1 second just when you were finished. So that was perfectly timed. Thank you for your question. Eddie, I believe you're up next. You are. And I'll just bring to the committee's attention that Eddie has sent in a fairly long email, and you'll find it on page 43 of the agenda.
So again, you just need to introduce yourself, and the question will be taken as read, and then you'll have time for the supplementary.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Eddie Holland. I'm a Hackney carriage driver proprietor since 1991. I'm part of Cambridge City Licensed Taxis, representing over 170 Hackney vehicles. And my question is, given that, I've been a proprietor
We've got the
since
question down already, Eddie.
Oh, right, okay.
Self-charging vehicles are more economical now. Why not extend the deadline? That's the question.
I think I'm taking this one. Thank you, Chair. So it is possible that it's cheaper to run standard hybrids at the moment compared to some electrics. Sorry, is that better? It's potentially true in some cases that standard hybrid cars are cheaper to run, cheaper to buy slightly than EVs at the moment. So there is an economic argument for it, but the policy that is brought in around environmental conditions and emissions is not based on economic activities. The purpose of it is to cut polluting and carbon emissions. That is the purpose of the policy, and that was what was taken through committee in 2018. The reality is that actually running costs for hybrids and electric are very, very similar, competitive. We've done a piece of work that was published as Appendix C that's in the pack with data around that, with comparisons of costs between different vehicle types, so diesel, traditional hybrid, and varying ranges of electric vehicle, including plug-in hybrids. And the cost per mile are competitive or better if you charge at home for an electric vehicle, slightly more expensive if you charge on the public network. So, they're in a similar range. Those are just the facts. So, whether self-charging, as you call them, traditional hybrid vehicles, which run solely on fossil fuels, by the way, are more economical is really irrelevant to the policy.
Can I retort to that?
Yeah, another question now, Eddie, or later?
Given your report, and you're saying you can buy vehicles from 2013. Now, if you bought a vehicle for 2013, spent £1,500 putting a meter, putting a camera, putting this, putting that, whatever we've got to do to jump through ever higher hurdles, you wouldn't want to put that on for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. You're looking at a 4-year cycle. You wouldn't want to buy an electric vehicle that's outside of manufacturer's warranty, because it's prohibitive. If that battery pack goes, it's going to cost you many more thousands of pounds. I think in my report I actually put down, which from a motoring magazine paper, that even a Nissan Leaf will cost you nearly £10,000 to actually renew that battery pack. Now, we can't, as businessmen, afford to take that chance. So then we've got to say, well, at very most, we've got to buy a vehicle that's 4 years old and run it for 4. So you've got the 8 years battery warranty on that electric vehicle. But it just don't make financial sense to somebody who runs a business. Have you ever run a business? You know, there's in your report, it's quite wide-ranging, but when it comes down to reality, most of what you've got in there has got very little credence to us as businessmen.
I mean, coming back on that, Chair, I mean, we did a snapshot of costs of vehicles on a particular day on Auto Trader. There were thousands of electric vehicles available. There were very competitive prices, actually similar models of the same car, same age, same mileage, one which was traditional hybrid, one which was plug-in hybrid, one which was fully electric, were very, very similar in price and, you know, nothing like the age you're talking about. In comparison, we published the range of vehicles available in that work. I don't...
But I think you need to narrow your search down to a reality of business. We're businessmen. We need to make a profit. We can't afford 40, 50, 60,000 pound cars.
I mean, they were nothing like those prices. And this
But
is
you need to narrow your search down to vehicles of 4 years old and less, not 2013.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah, I
what was
understand
done
that.
and put out in that document.
So again, that all gives credence to the fact is we're just ordinary people out there trying to earn a living and make a profit because we've got to buy cars, we've got the cost of living.
Eddie,
people
I need to stop you there, Eddie. I'm sorry, you are a public speaker, you're here to ask a question, and that's fine. But I think it's a little unfair to cross-examine the officer. If you've got a statement to make, that's fine. You've got a question to make, that's fine, and we'll do our best to answer it. But I understand...
Well, to us, it's very important, Russ.
I
You know, you
understand
say
how important
you're
it is.
always on our side,
I understand
but
how
you don't really
important
feel
it is.
like it.
But I understand how important it is, Eddie, but I'm sorry, but I can't allow the officer to be cross-examined in that way. But if you have another statement to make or a question that you'd like to ask him, that's fine, and he'll do his best to answer it. Thank you very much.
I don't know whether he could answer this next one. Given that South Cambs have got over 1,600 vehicles licensed and only one of them is a Hackney carriage, is that something that the City Council are trying to do, discourage Hackney carriages in favour of hire cars? Because you've got 1,600 cars coming into Cambridge day in, day out, night in, night out, with all the pollution, yet you're penalising 170 Hackney carriage drivers. What? It makes no sense.
Okay, thanks for your question, Eddie. Your time's up now. Did officer want to respond to that?
South Cambs are also bringing in a policy where all vehicles coming into the city will have to be electric or ultra low by 2028. They have committed to that policy. We're looking at doing it as a more phased return, but that will then, hopefully with the city access scheme that we're proposing, only electric and ultra low vehicles can come into the city regardless of who they're licensed by.
Yeah, no, we understand that, but it just seems that the city are trying to just bring it in 2 or 3 or 4
Time's
years
up,
earlier.
Eddie, I'm afraid. Time's up, Eddie.
And
Thank
why?
you.
Because we make little,
Yeah, time's up,
little
Eddie.
difference.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Ahmed K. And I've got on page 47 of the agenda, I've got an email. Is that from yourself? Did you send us an email? Just,
Which email, sir?
well, did you send us an email?
No, I think our secretary, Irfan, has sent the email.
Okay, so it may perhaps be somebody else then. Okay, thank you for that. Oh, it is him. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so we have got an email from you. Yeah, that's on page 47. So your question is about the error, people are against hybrids. We'd already spotted that, but thank you. I'll just let Yvonne respond.
Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention. It was also brought to my attention by the chair that we'd actually missed a word out in paragraph 3.18, which I think you're referring to. And what it should say is the petition was signed by 177 taxi drivers who strongly opposed the decision not to extend the June 2024 deadline. So that has been picked up. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
But you can, just the same as any other speaker, if you've got another question you'd like to ask, then please, you're in the chair.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Ahmed Karahmet. I'm the chairman of Cambridge City Licensed Taxis, representing over 60% of the whole Cambridge Hackney carriage trade. I hope you have all read the impact statements and seen the petition. But I have few comments on the officer's report. In recommendations, section 2, it is stated that only 14 vehicles will be affected from this policy change. This is far to be true. Your decision today will affect the whole saloon taxis. According to our record, since 29th of January, only in 4 months, 24 existing saloon taxis were replaced with standard hybrid vehicles. Taxis can be replaced regardless of their age limit. Taxis can also be replaced due to an accident write-off or a high-cost repair bill. Section 2.6 of the report clearly states that UK government has a long-term vision that all cars should be zero emission by 2040. The initial target was 2030. This was recently delayed with 10 years. Why the Council doesn't follow the recommendations of the central government and delay their December 2028 deadline for zero and low emission targets? In section 3.12, it is stated that the cost of electricity prices has been falling. In June 2023, Swarco, the company operating on behalf of the Council, has increased the taxi charging cost with over 150%. Council's taxi designated charging points are now more expensive than the regular charging points. For me to buy and run electric vehicle works out nearly 2 times more expensive than running my standard hybrid vehicle, because I live in a flat and I cannot benefit from home discounted night tariffs. In section 3.18, you have already addressed it. There was an error. Thank you very much for completing it. Full text of the petition can be found in Appendix E. Section 3.19 is stating that South Cambridge District Council is recently licensing around 1,400 vehicles. From the correspondence we received on Friday from their licensing, shows that correct figure is 1,619.
You've run out of time, I'm afraid. That's it. You can finish that sentence, then we're done.
In early May this year, joint taxi enforcement operation took place in Cambridge by South Cambridge Licensing and Cambridgeshire Constabulary. From 19 vehicles checked, only 3 were fully compliant. After this enforcement, in his comments, Councillor Henry Batchelor, lead cabinet member of South Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, thank you very much. I did say you could finish that sentence, not the whole statement. Thank you ever so much, all the same. Responses?
Would you like, I can take the point around the Swarco charging network. So, yes, there was a big price increase, and that was dependent on electricity prices. Electricity prices have risen 18 months ago for everybody, a huge amount. We, at the time, sustained a preferential 25p rate for taxi drivers from our charge points for over a year, whilst our contractor Swarco was paying 37 pence a kilowatt hour for electricity, so thereby making a loss on every kilowatt hour that a taxi driver charged. They were under significant financial pressure, and we negotiated a very competitive set of rates. 57 pence per kilowatt hour on our rapid chargers as a preferential rate for taxis, 79 pence per kilowatt hour for public access to those charge points where that's allowed. That remains very, very competitive. May's national figures for rapid charge points, on average, they are 80 pence per kilowatt hour on the public network in England and Wales, as per ZapMap. So 57 pence per kilowatt hour still remains a significant discount on the national picture. These charge points, although owned and installed by the City Council, are not run by the City Council under that contract. So it's an entirely private contract. Swarco need to make a profit in order to maintain those charge points. And as I said, the prices remain very, very competitive, especially for taxi drivers.
No, you've had your 2 questions. Thank you ever so much. We have question number 5. Is it Delaware? Who's asking that? No further speakers then? Right, I have one here. Mr. Delaware?
Where in this, Stephen Taylor?
We got, if he's not here, we've got Stephen Taylor as well.
Who asked the question, is there any negative impact on EV vehicles?
I didn't know that was
So
Councillor, I didn't
that
know
was question 5, and then we got question 6, which is Steve.
Sorry, can't hear you. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, don't mind at all.
Hi, Steve Taylor. I'm garage proprietor and also own 18 Hackney garage plates in Cambridge.
Thank you very much. Responses?
Joe was going to respond.
Joe's going to respond. Joe, can I ask you just to get a bit closer to the microphone?
Yeah, sorry, is that
It's
better?
fairly quiet to hear you.
I keep turning, I think, to look at the questioner. I think, Stephen, you've got 2 questions that are written questions. I'm going to take them both together because they're similar. So one is about winter issues with EV vehicles and one is about fires. I've done a bit of research on fires and I've tried to find really detailed forensic analysis of the numbers for this. So I've got 2 pieces of information around vehicle fires in electric vehicles, which are extremely rare. One is from the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, which reported 23 fires from 611,000 electric vehicles during 2022, or 0.004% in a year. And this makes it 20 times less likely for a fire to happen in an electric vehicle than it does in an internal combustion engine vehicle. Also, I've got data from Australia's Department of Defence, EV Fire Safe, and they've managed to verify fewer than 500 electric car battery fires ever globally out of 20 million EVs worldwide. That's 80 times rarer than an internal combustion engine fire. And if it was a frequent risk, it'd be reflected in insurance premiums, which it isn't. So the facts are that electric vehicles are much less likely to catch fire than internal combustion engine vehicles, somewhere between 20 and 80 times less likely. Looking at the cold weather impacts, cold weather definitely does affect battery performance. It's well documented that somewhere between 10 and 20% impact on vehicle range between 0 degrees and minus 20 degrees, something that we don't experience very often here. Your other point around cold weather, freezing batteries and immobilising people, trapping people in cars, I find it very, very difficult to find any instances of those that were credible, or it doesn't seem to be a very common occurrence at all. So I find very little evidence around that. I'm quite happy for you to present me with some evidence. I'll definitely look at that. So generally speaking, in cold weather, you need to use things like the heater in the car and so on. It's a known issue that you get less range out of a vehicle battery in cold weather. All of the manufacturers issue guidance around this and give advice on what to do to ameliorate that. But it is just a fact of operating one of those vehicles. But it's not a catastrophic thing. Indeed, in Europe, the country with the highest uptake of electric vehicles is Norway. It experiences much more extreme temperatures than we do, and there's not a big issue with it there.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, you asked 2 questions there, Mr. Taylor, already. However, you put them in, so if nobody's got any objections, I don't have a concern if you want to ask a supplementary.
Thank you. I think I got an extra question chucked at me. I'm a bit baffled now because the response from Joe there about electric vehicles are very rare catching fire. Why did Cambridgeshire Fire Brigade last week put out warnings about 2 electric vehicle fires to make sure that you plug them in properly and charge them properly? why have all scrapyards in the UK got big 40-foot containers that hold water so any damaged electric vehicle comes in has to be put in there for 48 hours? They're clearly not safe. They're not economical. They're nowhere near as efficient as a plug-in hybrid. They don't let you down the hybrids. They're always there. They can go on any distance. They can do anything, and they are a lot cheaper to run. I bought a new one on Friday, and I drove it back from Peterborough, and that was doing 65 to the gallon. I worked out that was costing me just over 9 pence a mile. When you are charging at 79 pence, that works out at 13, 14 pence a mile. And you're saying that the taxi prices is cheaper on electric. It used to be 13 pence. It's now 4 times as much. And the council encouraged the drivers to go and buy electric vehicles because the multi-seaters were too expensive to buy. So they were given an option to get an electric vehicle on a multi-seater plate. So we're not being helped. The way forward is to relook at this and see why everybody is supporting self-charging vehicles. It's because they're more economical, they're safer, they're more reliable, and they're 60% cheaper, even in your own report. Look at the price difference. It's a no-brainer. So we are asking if you can reconsider and extend the life of the self-charging vehicle, because I cannot afford to spend £63,000 on an electric multi-seater.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr Taylor.
Thank you.
Do you want to respond, Joe?
Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of points I'd like to come back on. The charging cost here for taxis is not 79p, it's 57p a kilowatt hour.
Sorry, Joe, could I just ask you to emphasise that?
Just to confirm that the cost for taxi drivers on our charging network for taxis in the city is 57 pence, not 79 pence. So just a correction there. In terms of the advice from the fire service, I'm not familiar with that particular report, but they have been very clear that there's a great deal of danger from things like illegally imported electric scooters and batteries for electric bicycles, causing a danger when they're not dealt with correctly. There's an enormous amount of health and safety governing the production and use of car vehicles, and the facts just don't bear out the dangers you are referring to. The fact that scrap dealers have special setups for dealing with scrap electric cars is because, yes, lithium batteries do present a hazard. It's a well-known one, and it has to be dealt with in terms of health and safety accordingly. But that doesn't mean that these things are inherently dangerous or present any greater risk. In fact, the facts bear out that they are actually lower risk than internal combustion engine vehicles.
Okay, thank you for that. So we've just run over a little bit over the 30 minutes, but I think it's well worth that. Lots of decent questions there. Councillor Hussain, you wish to speak? That's absolutely fine. You can speak now or another time. Sorry for the confusion. We didn't realise that question 5 was yours because you didn't tell me when I asked you that. You didn't tell me that. I said, did you submit a question? You said no. So that was our confusion. So sorry about that, but we know where we are now. So you can speak as a councillor either now or later in the meeting. How do you wish? Yeah. Do you wish to speak now? Okay, please.
Thank you, Chair. And everyone, thank you everyone to give me a chance to speak. I am doing the dual role as a city councillor, as a taxi driver. So, and I am driving EV taxi last 2 years. I want to share my personal experience. How does it work? Number one is mentioning we have rapid charge. What is the definition of a rapid charge? Rapid charge should be above 50 kilowatt per hour. But unfortunately, I shared this email to all of our committee members. I always charge in my home. I don't go there, but all that driver complaining about it. And I plug in my car, hour and 28 minutes, and I got only 18 kilowatt. That means my car is 77 kilowatt. It needs 6 hours and 15 minutes to recharge. And the price is, our contract say 57 pence, but unfortunately new payment system, they charge me 79 pence per kilowatt. Because I am using the same app, I don't task any, like a contactless or any other things. I have a taxi, I register as a taxi driver, and I plug in my vehicle, I connect it with the app, but the price comes 79 pence per kilowatt. As all the driver complaining, it is the real, I found it. And the charging point is time limit. We have a 1 hour maximum stay, but I need to plug in for full charge 6 hours and 15 minutes. If a taxi driver have living in block building or flat who have to charge in outside, how they can work? If they have to plug in for 4 or 5 hours and get a 20p discount, even not, they don't getting the discount. It is really shocking and it is not practical. As what we saying on thing, on paper, on website, but reality is really different. And I have a Volkswagen ID4, the electric vehicle. They say 317 mile range, but in practical I can drive 180 mile. That's the reality. If I go to Heathrow and come back, my battery is fully finished. I have to use rapid charge. If I plug in there, I have to wait 6 hours, 15 minutes, and cost me 63 pound. And I get a 110 pound fare and 63 pound I paying in only for recharging and waiting another 6 hours. How does it work? And the maintenance, and I expend my car for 54,000 pound to better environment and clean air. And within 2 years, my 2 headlights, the LED gone, and it is not covered by warranty because I'm using as a taxi, and mileage is high. And every light, the VW, only I have to do by VW. I cannot go any other place. They need to collaborate, they need to software update, and cost me on light 1,818 pound and 10 pence. So 2 light, I have to expend 3,600 pound only to change the side light. I used to be a combustion engine 99 pence. I can change my light within 2 minutes. And I have to book a taxi for 6 hours to replace the light. So it is really not realistic as a taxi work as at the moment, how the infrastructure is ready, is not really suitable. But still we everyone have a goal to go to net zero, give everyone a chance to use their livelihood and the environment, make a combination. It's the number one thing. And the second thing is, I want to mention about the public toilet. Is all the drivers that comes to me, in the night time around 5,000 people comes in the town to enjoy their night life. And around 500 professional taxi driver working in late night in weekend. But there is no public toilet facility in Cambridge city. That's a really shocking. And sometimes some people, ordinary people asking where the public toilet. They comes from abroad, they comes from other city. So there is no public toilet. It is a shame from my mouth to say we have no public toilet in Cambridge city and we are campaigning, we are the Great Britain, we are the great. But we need some public toilet facility immediately, portable or permanent. And most of the people I saw, I'm the eyewitness, even the woman, the 3-4 women surrounding and one woman sitting and do pee on the footpath. It is not her fault, it is our fault. As a city council, we cannot provide the service. And church is our holy place. You see all the church on the wall and the door, you see the pee mark. Every Saturday, late night, all the pee on the church wall in Cambridge city. And people need to go on Sunday to do their prayer in the church. So I ask, as a licensing committee, because this question comes to all the taxi driver, because they are professional, they cannot do pee on the road like this. So they request me to ask you to negotiate with other city service and make immediate public toilet facility for our city. And try to keep our own talent own residents who live in Cambridge City, but they are our little bit harsh policy in a taxi. They're going to Wolverhampton and Southcombe, take the licensing, and they work in Cambridge City with any car they have choice. So I hope the council or the member they understand this issue. Some previous speaker they already told, Southcombe have 1,600 private hire, Wolverhampton have 85,000 private hire license. But Cambridge City, we have only less than 100 because our harsh policy and short of lack of like MOT place, we have only one MOT place and we have to MOT 2 times. But Southcombe and other places, they're doing MOT once a year. So they have a free different choice. So they're not coming to Cambridge City. But I want all our residents who live in city, they should get a license from Cambridge City Council. It will be our revenue as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hussain. You put a lot of things in there in a reasonably short time, so well done for squeezing all those things in there. We've got a note of all those, and we'll definitely we'll speak on another occasion on some of that, because not all of it falls obviously into the remit of the licensing committee, but I get there are some issues there, so perhaps we need to link up with other parts of the council to see what resolutions can be sought for those. But thank you very much for that. Okay, in that case, that completes all our questions today. I know you're outside the time, but that's fine. Just to reassure members, and if there is anybody on screen, that in fact, as a councillor, you are allowed to speak outside of that at any meeting you wish, and that's what you've done. Thank you so much. I think we're now on to item 5. Yvonne, I believe it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is looking at the environmental considerations of the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire taxi policy. And for those members who are relatively new to this, I'll just give an outline of the history of the journey that we've gone through to get to where we are today. So in October 2016, members amended the taxi policy to include a commitment to implement changes to increase the take-up of ultra-low and zero-emission vehicles, such as plug-in hybrids with emission levels of less than 75 grams per kilometre of carbon monoxide or electric only. In 2018, this policy was implemented as a phased approach over a 10-year period, with a view to having all our taxis and private hire electric or ultra-low by 2028. In 2020, all new saloon vehicles must be electric or plug-in hybrid. So that's any new vehicle, either new vehicle or a new renewal of an existing plate. In 2022, the trade were concerned about the availability of such vehicles due to Brexit, the pandemic and the crisis in Ukraine. There was a need to be flexible, and members of this committee agreed in June 2022 to allow saloon vehicles to be standard hybrid with emission levels of less than 120 grams per kilometre to be licensed until June 2024, when it will be reviewed. In January 2024, this change in the policy was reviewed, and officers brought a report to this licensing committee to review the policy, to remove the inclusion of the standard hybrids and revert back to the original policy of ultra-low or electric saloon cars. This decision was resolved unanimously, and you can see the appendix on B on page 25. Following the decision, the trade were concerned, and a meeting was arranged in March 2024 with the Chief Exec, Chair of Licensing and the Environmental Health Manager. Evidence of availability, cost and performance, as outlined in Appendix C on page 27, was presented, and we were comparing like for ultra-low and electric and standard hybrid. At the meeting, it was agreed that the trade would provide evidence that could give additional context on how this decision would impact drivers. And by the 17th of May, 10 impact statements were provided, A petition signed by 177 drivers was submitted, and these can all be found in Appendix D and E from page 33 on. The main point raised by the trade was the financial difficulties this decision would cause the trade, and there was also some question about the effectiveness of the ultra-low emission vehicles compared to standard hybrid, and concern around what is the actual impact on air quality. It should also be noted, as already said, that South Cams are mirroring Cambridge City's policy that all of their licensed vehicles will be zero or ultra-low by the 1st of December 2028. This would also tie in with our current policy of restricting city centre access to ultra-low and zero-emission vehicles only by December 2028. So reverting back to the recommendation, that's on page 10. So members of the Licensing Committee are recommended to confirm the decision made on the 29th of January 2024 and to agree the policy that's listed in Appendix A, and to note that this reversion back to the original policy will impact on 14 standard hybrids. Thank you, Chair.
Questions, members? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is, I'm a bit confused with the dates given. So my overriding concern is what notice we've given people, because if you're going to change the policy, you know, it's an expensive thing to change your car. So, you know, it is reasonable for us to give people notice that policy is changing, and then they can plan their business accordingly. So in October 2016, we amended the policy, but that was just for some future date. Nothing actually happened in 2016, is that right?
So 2016, this committee took a commitment to ask officers to go out and have a look at what we wanted to do to make a commitment to our net zero. So that was a commitment that this council made, that we would consider what is out there. We then brought another committee, so that was a 2-year planning or 2-year research, and then we brought another committee report back in 2018 to implement the new policy.
And that new policy was implemented with effect from 2020?
Yes, so there was a 2-year phased in. So that also allowed us to bring in the recharge points. So we've got 21 taxi charge points. So we were given the capital money to invest in 21 charge points for taxis only. So during that period of time, we brought in the infrastructure and we supported the trade with an implementation of in 2020.
So from 2020, people were still allowed to have a standard hybrid vehicle, which we've been hearing is
existing. So we're talking about any new vehicle. So this is anyone that's, so back then we had an age limit.
Yeah.
So the age limit was 9 years. After 9 years, you had to change your vehicle.
Right.
So if a vehicle was coming up to its age of 9 years and they needed to change their vehicle, they would have had to replace it with a plug-in hybrid or an electric.
From 2020
From
onwards.
2020. Anything existing would remain on the fleet until that age limit. That age limit was then extended from 9 years to 12 and 15 years for ultra-low and electric respectively. So it wasn't asking the trade to go back and change all their vehicles immediately. They had the lifespan of their vehicle to make those business decisions.
Okay, so all taxi drivers and operators were aware that from 2020, if they wanted to bring a new car in, it had to be either standard hybrid, it had to be plug-in hybrid or electric, fully electric, from 2020 onwards.
Yes.
But existing cars could stay, and there's a relicensing every year, isn't there? But they could stay until the end of their life. Right, okay. So a taxi driver in January and this year, in 2024, will have had 4 years knowing that any new cars should be a plug-in hybrid or electric, right? But we're saying there's 14 of them. So what's the 14?
So what my understanding is what the trade have asked us to do is continue allowing new vehicles to be licensed that are standard hybrid for another 2 years.
Okay.
To give them another 2 years. So our calculation, and I appreciate this doesn't take into account vehicles that have broken down or vehicles that need replacing, but when you look at our existing policy of the age rules,
Yeah.
then there are currently 14 standard hybrids who are due to be replaced because their age limit is coming up over the next 14 years. So it would mean, depending on which way this policy goes today, that those 14, if we don't extend it to 2026, which is what the request is from the trade, you're going to have 14 vehicles that are technically going to be negatively impacted and
Right.
have to change. Where if we extend it to 2026, they wouldn't have to change into an ultra low, they could remain a standard hybrid. If we do change the policy today, then those vehicles will be negatively impacted.
Right. And then just, thank you, that's much clearer now. So just finally then, if, what's the 2028 date? Is that, the 28 date means after that it has to be fully electric? Or again, the vehicles that were licensed in between now and then can still stay until the end of their life?
Yes, so basically, back in the day, in 2016 to 18, we as a council took a commitment that we would aspirationally like all our taxi vehicles to be electric or ultra low by 2028. And so that was our aspiration. We knew that there's going to be what I would call a couple of stragglers that hadn't quite got there, but they were due to be replaced for electric ultra low. This at the time, we were also considering this for wheelchair accessible, but we also appreciate the wheelchair accessible market may not be up to speed at the moment, which is why we're focusing on saloon. However, due to our flexibility back in 2022 to allow another 2 years, although we're aspiring to 2028, it's likely that with the change that we made in 2022 to 2024, we're not likely to have all our vehicles ultra low or electric by, I'm going to say 2035. I'm looking at Joe now quickly with our sums.
Sorry, if I can just sort of come in there. So, I mean, the original policy meant that because of our age restrictions, all of the taxis would have had to have been replaced by 2028. So in theory, they could have all run their time and transitioned to the new standard.
Yeah.
So it basically impacted, no, it didn't cut anyone's vehicle life any more than existing policy. So it was flexible in that regard. So the fact that we have given a little bit of a derogation because of the availability of cars in the middle of that period, there will be a few standard hybrids now that if they play out their age restriction, they'll still be on the fleet after 2028. But it is a very small number, and they are, you know, reasonably low emission. But the idea was that after 2028, you know, there wouldn't be any vehicles on the fleet that weren't low emission.
Okay.
And that's how the policy was set up. So it's given that everybody would run out their licence time, no one would be forced to change their car earlier than they imagined they would, and that the policy could be brought in with you know reasonable, a just transition to the electric vehicles.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, I've got another set of questions.
No, that's absolutely fine. Is anybody else wishing to speak? So, Councillor Young, you're in the role, you might as well carry on. Are you okay with that, Councillor Griffin? Okay, please.
Okay, thank you. So the next sort of questions is around cost. So I've heard in the report it said we've got 1,400 vehicles, roughly, taxis, and we've got 21 charging points. Is that right?
No, we've got 500 vehicles. Cambridge City have got 5. It's 40 in the report. It was 1,400 for South Cams, but we've got about 500. So we've got about 300 hacks and probably 100 and something private hire. So 450 ish.
Okay, but South Cams also operate within Cambridge City, don't they?
Anybody can operate in the city.
Right. Yeah. So we've got nearly 2,000 vehicles and 21 charging points. Is that right? Is that right?
We have installed 21 charge points in the city for taxis.
That does not seem adequate to cover all the taxis that are operating here.
Most of South Cams are not electric at the moment.
Oh, right, okay. So are there plans to increase, I mean, I've also understood from the discussion that they get on those charging stations, they get a reduced rate, or there seems to be some debate as to actually what they are being charged. But if we are asking them all to be plug-in hybrid or electric, it's reasonable for us to be providing more than 21 charging points. Do we have plans to increase the number?
I'm going to revert over to Joe because he will be able to, or he probably won't off the top of his head, but we know what the usage is at the moment for those charge points, and they're very underutilised, I would suggest. But we need to work with South Cams because obviously the City Council funded the install of these charge points. We are looking at other types of charge points, so car parks, not taxi related, but as a City Council, we are looking at more charge points in the city. We need to work with South Cams, I think. If they're implementing that, they need to also support the infrastructure, not just in the city, but in the surrounding villages. But I'll revert over to Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Young. Yeah, so there's a number of things to unpack there. Yes, we've got this network which was partly funded by central government funding, partly funded by the Greater Cambridge Partnership and partly funded by the City Council to introduce a rapid network for taxis, exclusively for taxis for the first 3 years with a preferential rate. Utilisation of that network is still quite low, so the most used site is used about 15% of the time. And on average, that network is used about 5% of the time. So it's not oversubscribed in terms of usage by the trade or by the public. We have that data available. It's also worth noting that currently we have about 60 electric vehicles on our own fleet. That are able to take advantage of those sites. I'm not sure how many South Cams have, but they have a number as well, and they are eligible to apply and use those charge points as well. But as I said, they're not massively overused. In fact, they're significantly underused. And for the first 3 or 4 years, it was sort of sub 3% usage.
Okay, but that says to me that taxi drivers are charging them their vehicles elsewhere, so they're not getting the preferential rate. And have we asked why? I mean, are they in the wrong places? I mean, I also understand that charging a vehicle overnight takes a long time. I think that somewhere in the report, or some of the comments, the inputs that we've had from the taxi drivers, it takes 6 hours to charge a vehicle. I mean, that's not practical. Or everywhere. I mean, presumably that needs to be somewhere near where they live. And if they don't, one person certainly didn't have a house where he could charge his taxi at home. So where are they charging, and why are we asked why they're not using our charging stations?
It's definitely economically preferential to charge at home if you can. Because the cost is much lower, and you can now buy significantly advantageous tariffs to do so, to charge overnight as low as 7 pence per kilowatt hour in some cases. So, you know, we carried out, with Energy Saving Trust, a detailed feasibility study which looked at location, the number of charge points we would need, and so on, the behaviour of taxi drivers. We polled taxi drivers back in 2016 for this, looked at their behaviour, looked at who had charging at home, who didn't, in a great deal of detail. All of this was presented in the report before we bought the policy in 2018, and we bid for and provided the sort of network that was required to support the activity of our taxi drivers. They were consulted about locations. We did our best to get charge points in the sorts of places that were required. There are other constraints around putting in charge points, electricity supply being one, health and safety being another. And, you know, it's been quite a challenge getting that network in. But it is successful and effective. And I said it's got a sort of modest usage, and the reason being that rapid charging is always going to be more expensive than other forms of charging. Not all taxi drivers are able to have off-street parking. That's definitely an issue, and therefore they're reliant on public networks. And that's why we've made that provision. Also, at a 50 kilowatt charge point, you can roughly get about 70 to 80% of a charge of your battery charged in between 20 and 40 minutes, if you're available to take advantage of that. I note that Councillor Delaware said he could only get 12 kilowatts from one of the sites. Well, some vehicles are not capable of charging at 50 kilowatts. Some can only charge at 11.5 kilowatts. That's changing very rapidly. Some early models are stuck charging. I don't know what model the councillor drives, but certainly that's becoming a lot rarer. So all of our rapid chargers are capable of providing a 50 kilowatt an hour, 50 kilowatt charge. In terms of future provision, well, the idea was that government would pump prime a significant amount of charging initially for taxis, but more widely as well. They've provided various funding. We've done some on-street slower charging as well in a number of areas that we've been successful getting government money for. But the market is also really catching up, and there's an enormous amount more provision than there was. The Combined Authority and County Council have also bid for successfully LEVI funding, low emission vehicle infrastructure funding, and we'll be taking forward a Combined Authority wide electric vehicle and charging strategy over the coming years. They've just got a new officer in post to bring this forward, and they'll be looking at all of these issues in the round. So really, the kind of the focus of charge point provision has moved more mainstream, and it'll be partly market, and this Combined Authority group, of which I do contribute to, will be looking at the areas that are not going to be provided by market forces, basically, over the coming years. But as I say, the infrastructure we have currently is sufficient to service the current demand.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, are you done, Councillor Leah?
Yes, thank you.
Lots of good questions there. Thank you very much. I think it's also useful to have people here on the committee. It's quite a complicated issue. I've not been here before. And to ask those questions, I think, in actuality, it's a really good roundup for everybody, I think. So I think most people appreciated you asking those questions. That was great. So, Councillor Griffin, you're next. And Tim, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
I think I've got everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank Councillor Young because she asked many of the questions that I had in my mind. But I'm still struggling a bit with the sort of the clash of viewpoints here, because from the officers I'm hearing, well, everything's okay, things are going along as planned, and this proposal here should be of no problem. And I'm seeing that we have on the other hand, I'm seeing we have a petition signed by 177 taxi drivers that seem to take issue with that and have a very different point of view. And these are people that are taxi drivers and are dealing with these day-to-day problems that we've heard something about here today. And so I'm just trying to figure out I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but maybe one of you could address this. Why is there such a conflict here? Why aren't we a little bit closer to an agreement here or some sort of compromise? That's my question or comment.
Did you want to respond?
I'll try. So obviously the trade are a business and they run a business and they need to do it as economically as possible. We all understand that. But on the same hand, as a council, we are committed to climate change, we're committed to net zero, and we need to start pushing our policies to start meeting that longer term challenge or longer term aspiration that as a council that we have signed up to. So there's always going to be conflicts between various partners on a lot of these address levels. And it's really what is the priority of this council as we go towards climate change and net zero. And I think that's where it's getting that balance right between the two. Joe, did you want to?
So I'd just add to that clearly the huge hike in electricity prices has made a difference to the attractiveness of this policy for those running businesses. That's something completely outside the control of the City Council. In fact, everybody's had to cope with that. Electricity prices are coming down. We will negotiate hard with our charge point supplier on a regular basis to try and make sure we maintain competitive costs. So I can certainly give that commitment. I think that also any change is difficult, and the transition to an electric vehicle requires a change of mindset, something that the taxi trade really embraced well at first, those that were pioneers of it. And I was very, very thankful for that, and they became good advocates for this activity. But, you have to operate in a different way. There are different constraints around these vehicles. And I think that transition is hard, and it's even harder if it's not so financially advantageous as it was at the start. It was a much easier sell when electricity was costing 13p a kilowatt hour. It no longer is. But in time, if you factored in all the environmental impacts of fossil fuel, you would still remain a competitive environment. It still does. It's still competitive mile per mile versus diesel at the moment.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up? So the question is, it seems to me that we have a choice here to either uphold the deadline of June 24 or possibly to extend it to 26. So what are the pros and cons of those two things? What are we trading off here? What would be the negative impact of extending the deadline again to 2026?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Griffin. A very good question. Initially, we focused on reducing the emissions of taxis because in the city centre area, they were responsible for 11% of tailpipe emissions, contributing to poor air quality in the city centre at the time. And we've seen a significant improvement in that due to policies we've taken on both buses and taxis, things that we could have a significant influence on. That having been said, the marginal impacts of banning new traditional hybrids is going to be quite small in terms of air pollution. It's going to be bigger in terms of carbon emissions, because at the end of the day, a traditional hybrid solely runs on fossil fuel for all the marketing hype around plug-in hybrids and electric running and so on. Actually, the entire amount of energy in a traditional hybrid comes from fossil fuel, and there's no way around that, whether they're doing sort of 55 miles per gallon or 70 miles per gallon. It's still all tailpipe emissions at the end of the day. So the impact is quite small because there is a relatively small part of the current fleet, but it's nonetheless fewer emissions if you move them onto electric.
Councillor Bick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I found the questioning really helpful. I think we're all asking each other's questions at the moment. And I just as a note point, the big revelation to me from the questions has been that perhaps the report could have referred to the word new in relation to the change expected in the middle of this year. I feel that is now clear to me that we are talking about vehicles that have reached an age where they need to be replaced, and the question is, what with? That seems to me much clearer from the questions and the answers that we've received. I just wanted to ask one further question, and that is, since the policy was adopted in 2018, how many new registrations of electric and plug-in hybrids have there been? It may be in the report, and there are massive figures. It would help if that was turned up to us, because I think it gives us some sense of what has actually happened since the decision in 2018 was taken, and to know kind of how many people have moved forward in conformance with that plan and invested accordingly. It seems quite an important thing to put in the balance with the request that we sort of hold fire on people making a similar change.
I think, obviously, wheelchair accessibles aren't part of this, so I think we're nearing the 100 mark. I think 94 is coming to my mind, because I have to do returns every quarter. So I think we're nearing the 100 mark now. I think we've got 22% of our Cambridge City Council's taxis, 22% are ultra low or electric.
So could you take out of that the numbers that we aren't applying the policy to at the moment, the disability access ones, and tell me what the percentages are of the vehicles that we are addressing?
I think we've got 160 wheelchair accessibles. I'll do my maths very quickly here.
What's the total number?
So, there's about 250 vehicles that aren't wheelchair accessible, and we've got nearly 100 which are electric or ultra low. But I don't hold me to that because I haven't got the figures in front of me. Luke's just checking now on the database. So can I come back to you on that question? Because I want to give you accurate information.
Yes, I hope you would. But just if those sort of numbers are right, and I still look for validation, if we're addressing our policy to about 250 for the moment, and 100 or thereabouts have already registered new vehicles since 2018 as electric or plug-in hybrid, and 14 are impacted by the decision that was taken in January. Where's the rest? I don't understand. I'm maybe not thinking terribly logically here, but if 100 have already changed and only 14 are affected by the decision
So some
today,
of these, some,
what about the others?
yeah, so some of those vehicles haven't reached their end of life yet. So there's more vehicles that are going to be end of life after 2026. So they haven't, when I say end of life, I mean the expiry of their registration. So that any petrol or diesel will have a 9-year lifespan. So they may not come to an end until after 2026. But it's the 14 that end of life is between 2024 and 2026. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Mr. Cuff, the floor is yours, and welcome, by the way.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't hear your last comment there.
I said welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would like to say that I share the cloud of concern which I think is coming from Councillor Young and from Councillor Griffin about some elements of this proposal. I feel that the impact statements as presented are quite powerful, and I'm not sure that the report really sort of tackles each of the issues raised in those impact statements in detail. You know, as you might have get in the planning thing where they say these are the things that are raised and these are our responses. So, you know, it's like a sort of consultation response. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm conscious of the issues raised by the taxi drivers about, well, is this viable, or would we be better just sort of effectively moving away from Cambridge and being registered somewhere else, as far as Wolverhampton. So it would have been nice, in my view, to have seen some skeleton income statements for what it is like to operate a standard hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, and also so we can actually understand what financial pressures the taxi drivers are facing. I think the argument about amortising the use of an electric vehicle over the period, the battery life warranty before that expires, that's also very important because I can take that. I think that's a solid point. And, you know, so actually, if we had tried to understand the financial realities that the taxi drivers face, then, and had presented that in a way that one could have looked at it, that might have made me less concerned. So at the moment I'm living, possibly like two other councillors, in a cloud of concern about this. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, did you indicate to speak?
Yes, sorry,
Sorry,
I just wasn't sure if you were asking a question. So I have a couple of things just to remind my fellow councillors of, and also a couple of questions, I think. So firstly, I'd just like to remind everyone that this council did declare a climate emergency, and that was a unanimous decision. I understand that was before some people here were elected. But in our Climate Change Strategy 2021, we did commit to being a net zero carbon council by 2030. And we have an ambition to be a net zero carbon city also by 2030. I do appreciate in the report that the national guidelines are 2050, but I think that it's pretty much understood that anyone paying any attention to climate would acknowledge that 2050 is too late. As part of that climate change strategy, we have our own EV policy for council vehicles. So we're not just asking our taxi drivers to have ultra low or energy electric vehicles by 2028, but that's our policy for our own vehicles. Obviously, like for the wheelchair accessible, There are some vehicles like the very, very large bin lorries and some of the very large street sweepers that are not currently available. So like with the wheelchair accessible, we're being flexible, but our policy is to move to wheelchair accessible, to move to electric vehicles ourselves. We also have our new air quality strategy, which we signed up to this year, and I'm pleased to say that we are doing that in conjunction with South Cambs, and our policy that we agreed on this for the taxis in 2018, when we agreed that, South Cambs were not doing anything. And we have been leading by example, not just in Cambridgeshire, but actually nationally. We've had national interest on that. And other councils, for example, South Cambs, are now following suit. So it does have an impact. When one council takes the lead, or more than one council takes the lead, it does have an impact. And that's what we need to do to clean up the air in Cambridge, but also to cut our own carbon emissions here in Cambridge and across Britain, also obviously globally. I'm pleased to say that the South Cambs are also following our policies on a number of areas. For example, the training and things that we expect our taxi drivers to do to enable and ensure the safety of our residents and visitors that use them. I agree with the first question about making it well known, more publicly well known, that our taxi drivers go through rigorous checks, rigorous training, and also, obviously, with these policies are more environmentally friendly. And I think that we should do more to advertise that, and I'd be happy to talk to the chair and environmental health manager on that. So my questions, also I'd just like to say in the meeting, because I think possibly only the chair was present in 2022, we also had a lot of people coming to public speakers at that committee asking us not to change the policy, and that was residents. We had a lot of residents saying, do not backtrack on this, and it was particularly residents around the station, but there were residents concerned about the impacts. So I just need to add that since we've been going through the history. I just wonder, it was touched on earlier, if we extend to 2026, when would the taxi fleet roughly be fully ultra low emission? Do we know that? And how would that fit with our 2030 targets? Plus, how would that fit with our 2028 plans for city access? Because obviously the long lead-in, the plan was that by 2028, pretty much all of our vehicles through their natural life would then have been replaced with ultra-low or electric. No one would be forced to get rid of a good car to just fit with the policy. We've already extended that by 2 years. If we do it by another 2 years, how does that then fit with the 2028? And would then is there a chance that there would be vehicles that could be licensed by us but couldn't access parts of the city? Thank you. And so would need to get new vehicles anyway in 2028.
So just on the point, if we did extend it to 2026 and we kept the 9-year maximum age limit for standard hybrids, my calculation says that we could potentially have standard hybrids on the fleet until 2035.
Yvonne, it'll be 11 years, the age.
Oh, 11 is it now?
11, sorry.
Oh yeah, so 37. 2037.
Just to add to your other part of the question, which is around bringing in selective restriction on access. We are planning to go ahead, and that's been stated in our air quality action plan for a number of years, to pursue a restriction on the city centre access for non-electric and ultra-low emission vehicles. It would have to be a policy decision at a later date. It would actually have to be a change to the current stated policy aims to allow traditional hybrids through any of those restrictions. So it's potentially, yes, after 2028, you could have those vehicles restricted from operating right in the city centre.
So I'd just like to clarify on that. Either the council would need to change our policy and sort of backtrack on our air quality and climate commitments, or if we extend it today, then those drivers would either not be allowed into the sort of very city centre or would need to purchase new vehicles then.
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Joe, just for clarification, you're saying purchase new vehicles in 2028?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about the impact of 14 vehicles, aren't we? Yeah, sorry, the public question time's over when it, sorry.
Just to clarify, we are talking saloons at this moment in time.
Yeah, so we're talking about 14 vehicles for 2 years, basically, aren't we?
So there's 14 vehicles whose end of life will be up in the next 2 years. But there'll also be vehicles that will either have broken down or need to be replaced for other reasons. But at this moment in time, our statistics is showing we've got 14 vehicles that will naturally come to their end in the next 2 years.
So it's 14 vehicles for 2 years.
Yeah.
That is a tangible impact at this time. So that's what it all boils down to in the end, isn't it?
Can I just clarify, that's 14 standard hybrid vehicles. There will be other petrol diesel vehicles that expire within that time limit as well.
So we're talking about more than 14 vehicles then?
We're talking 14 standard hybrid vehicles that wouldn't, so a standard hybrid that expired between 24 and 26, it wouldn't be able to replace like for like. But there will be other petrol and diesel ones, which I believe, if you give me a minute, is in the table of findings.
Yeah, okay. So it's quite complex, all this, isn't it? I guess you're talking about, outside of that 14 vehicles, I guess you're talking about standard diesel or petrol vehicles anyway. So I'm just sort of trying to get a handle on here that if we kept to the recommendations that are on here, those vehicles that we've not discussed, that are not inside that 14, and that do have petrol or diesel propulsion at this time, would, when their life comes to an end, if it comes to an end inside that 2 years, if we didn't extend it, they would have to purchase a vehicle that reaches this emission standard. But if we did extend it by 2 years, they would not have to do that and could possibly buy a standard hybrid vehicle, which they would have until around about 2037-ish. Is that about it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And there's 9 other Hackney carriage vehicles that aren't wheelchair accessible vehicles that are petrol or diesel that would expire in that time, and 10 private hire vehicles that are petrol or diesel. So an extra 19 vehicles that aren't wheelchair accessible vehicles.
So we're now talking about an impact on 33 vehicles, not 14.
In total, yes, so 14 hybrid vehicles and 19 petrol or diesel vehicles.
Okay, that presents a slightly different picture. I thought you might wish to ask a question. Thank you. Councillor Young.
Yeah, just arose out of what Councillor Moore was saying. I wasn't aware that we had plans to restrict the access to the city centre. Could someone just very briefly summarise that for me, please?
Yeah, please, Councillor Moore.
The city centre is already restricted, so it would be using the same bus gates, but just only electric or ultra-low emission vehicles being through. So no extra restrictions, just and not the types of vehicles. So, for example, it's buses and taxis, and obviously emergency vehicles. So that wouldn't change. There's no new. And obviously it's not all gone through, but that's been the long-term plan. It would just, and that was part of the plan in 2018, was that our taxis, yes, we were putting these restrictions on our taxi drivers, but by then only electric or ultra-low being able to get through those gates, that would also mean that only our licensed taxis or people who came to their standard would be able to drop off and pick up in the city centre. So it balances out the challenges by pushing that onto other taxi firms too.
Okay, so we're just talking about the very, very city centre, right? In those gates. Okay, thanks.
Yes, where the current bus gates are already, that have been in long before I was a councillor.
Just put the microphone on, please. Thank you.
Apologies. I'm familiar with the bus gate on Silver Street. Are you talking about the bus gate on the top of Regent Street? Is that as well? And I apologise for my ignorance on this, but where are the bus gates? And so that we can understand what the options are for taxi drivers to operate and effectively drop people off at the edge of the bus gate.
Well, it's the city core that as a driver, if you're not a bus driver or a taxi driver, that you can't drive into. So there's the one on Regent Street, Silver Street, there's St John's, Bridge Street.
Sorry, I think there are several. So there's one at the end of Jesus Lane as well. There's one on the road between Christ Pieces and the Grafton Centre. So it's really the historic core of the city that's locked down to buses and taxis, emergency vehicles and deliveries only.
Thank you.
Yeah, please carry on.
So it is only the historic core, but obviously it would give a benefit to Cambridge City licensed taxis who've had to fulfil these more strict criteria, but then they would be the only ones that could access that area unless other taxi firms followed suit. So it sort of levels the playing field.
Councillor Moore, can I ask if that is a decision that's been made, already voted on at committee? It was fairly new to me.
No, and obviously we're not the Highways Authority. It is in conjunction, it's part of the city access, and it's in our air quality strategy 2024 to 2028.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please.
And it was part of our plans in 2018, and that was, it ran alongside this taxi licensing policy. Obviously, along the way, there have been different plans for managing congestion and air quality in Cambridge. And so we're having to be flexible as those plans change. But the idea still stands that we don't just want to sort of penalise our Cambridge City licensed taxis by giving strict restrictions on them. It's important that there's a benefit as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do remember the discussions taking place, but I didn't remember any decision being made, so it hasn't actually been made. That's why I don't remember it. Luke?
In response to Councillor Pick's earlier question, to give you the current makeup of our fleet as of today, so the licensed vehicles, we have 381 vehicles licensed by Cambridge City Council. 108 of them are standard hybrids, 59 are fully electric, 31 are the plug-in ultra-low vehicles, 31, and that leaves 183 that are currently diesel or petrol.
Luke, do you know how many are wheelchair?
I don't, but I can find that out.
Are there any other questions so far? Councillor Clough, please.
I think my proposal would be that we try and determine whether it is actually what the profitability of running a taxi is in Cambridge under the because I don't understand that at the moment, and it seems as if we've got environmental pressures which are very valuable, very important, and yet we're not fully clear as to whether it's worth running a taxi here on being on the licensed by Cambridge, or whether the answer is just bail out and go to South Cambs or Wolverhampton. Do we have that information?
No, we don't hold that information. We're here as a regulator. We're here to ensure that the rules are followed and the policies are met and the legal requirements are met. That would be a business decision by any business who would wish to work out what the profitability of their business is, not just taxis, but all the businesses in the city. That is not a responsibility of the council.
Yes, but if we're going down a policy track which makes it, not viable to run a taxi, then we're just going to end up with our ranks empty.
So more?
Just to remind councillors that it's only Cambridge City licensed hackney cabs that can go on our taxi ranks. Nobody else can pick up that. People are shaking their heads. But that's legally, if there's evidence of others doing that, then we would like to know, and the Environmental Health and Licensing team will and do take action on that. So, and that was the point, coming back to the question of the livery, is to make it really clear to residents which taxis can and should be hailed in the street or can be picked up in a taxi rank, because it's only the ones that are licensed, hackney cabs licensed by Cambridge City Council.
So, Councillor Bick.
I'm still looking for one number, which is the wheelchair accessible, which makes sense of all the other numbers that Luke gave.
Yeah, we have 125 wheelchair accessible vehicles currently licensed.
To interpret that then, I should really assume that 125 of the 183 diesel or petrol are, so in fact we have about 60 odd non-wheelchair accessible diesel and petrol still.
Would the members find it beneficial to have a 10-minute break, get their head round all these figures before voting, or are we ready to rock? Okay, that's fine. There's a lot of figures there, lots of things to take into consideration, so it's worth saying that. Before we go to that, Councillor Hussain has indicated to speak a little earlier on. And this is an important issue, and I don't mind being flexible at these meetings at all. So what I'd like to do is, Councillor Hussain, if you'd like to have the last word before voting for your for your colleagues, as long as, if you're representing their general view as a councillor and not a taxi driver, that's the most important thing to say. So if you wish to speak again on their behalf, you're doing so as a city councillor. You'll be clear on that? Okay, thank you very much. Where you go?
Thank you very much. Yes, as we talking about the amount of charging point, a number of charging point, I think everyone observe, all the officer or councillor, so is more than enough at the moment, but the quality. Quality not usable, not a single one. As our officer explained, my vehicle may be not enough capacity, they're taking only 12 kilowatt an hour, but unfortunately it is not real. My vehicle can capacity 150 kilowatt voltage, where I can charge in Waitrose, they have 250 kilowatt, and Tesla, they have it up to 250 kilowatt, but our Sorco, which one is funded by council.
Can I just remind you, you're speaking as a councillor, not as a taxi driver. What you're giving us is a report on your taxi and your business as a taxi driver. So what we'd like to hear is your reflection of your colleagues behind you, of their perspective of where we are now, rather than your personal opinions as a taxi driver. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, but I want the council to look the charging point, their quality and the price. And we need to improve our voltage up to 250 kilowatt an hour. But unfortunately, I am getting only 12 kilowatt an hour. It is not useful. If you look around and you see all the time, they are empty, otherwise somebody plug in and go for shopping. That's the reality. Otherwise, no one plug in there to use their vehicle to use as a taxi, because it's so slow and expensive. Is a BP, or if you compare to other market, Tesla, BP and home charging, they're much better and cheaper. So we need to improve our charging quality, Sorco. They say up to 50, but reality comes to 12 kilowatt. It is not a rapid charge, but the charging money is more than rapid charge. And is especially the heat who people live in the block building and flat, they have no charging facility at home. And when we pressure them to become an electric vehicle, how they use their vehicle charging, and this long time, it is not realistic. And I hope if we can minimize our carrying our air quality and our taxi trade, we should be some minimized point to improve our taxi service, keep as a standard, and keep as a comparative with the other council. Because if we only enforce some law or policy, only few minority taxi driver, only 345 taxi drivers, but this Cambridge City operate almost more than 200 taxi. But they are not operated by our law and policy. They come from Wolverhampton, they come from Southcombe. So it is the reality of the pollution level, it is the reality of the EV charging, and you, councillor, you voted, I am not a committee member, and it will be not anything my own interest directly, because I am already using EV, is before the law is in force. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that last clarification point. That was important. Thank you for that. Okay, if we're ready to go, then all those in favour of the recommendations on page 10 at 2.1, there are 3 sections to that. We could either take those individually or en bloc, whatever is your wish. Everybody all together? Okay, in that case, those people, those members in favour of those recommendations, please show.
6, Chair.
And those against?
1, Chair.
And so we have no abstentions. That concludes today's meeting in that case. Thank you so much, everyone.